what's on your mind. I've got something to ask you. I'm burning up inside. Stay with me, I wanna know. Just tell me what's on your mind. Tell me.
And welcome back to the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, as always, Ryan Moore, and this is the Game of the Year episode. This is the episode where I talk about my top 10 list of games that I played this year that came out this year. This is my own personal top 10, but I am only doing games that I played this year that came out in the year 2021. So, just a little backstory about Game of the Year for me. Game of the Year is always something special where I look back and, a lot of websites and other podcasts and stuff look back on the year of gaming and they debate on what games were better than others and things like this. This is my personal top 10, so it's going to be games that I've played that also came out this year, but I didn't get to everything. This year for me has been a crazy year, a great year, one of the best years, possibly the best year of my life. And that's because I moved across the country this year from California to Tennessee. And Tennessee is just so much better than California. I've lived in California my entire life, except for 1 year where I lived in Denver, Colorado in 2008. And that was a great year too, but this takes the cake for sure. Tennessee is so beautiful. We have an amazing 2-acre lot that we have chickens and ducks and dogs and cats. And we're thinking a bit about getting an alpaca at some point and other animals. So it's just been a very fun and awesome year. I built a lot of stuff. I built a new studio in my basement. I have a basement, first of all. That's great. In California, I had kind of a what I called the murder room. And the murder room was this weird closed off fake room that existed underneath the house, but it wasn't a basement because it was still above ground. And so here in Tennessee, it's part above ground, part below ground, and it's huge. It's most of the underground of the house. And I've built a full-on studio for work where I stream and do remote teleconferencing for 8 hours at a time, talking about soldering and teaching soldering and things like that. But also, I've built a full-on editing bay in this separate room of the basement. So I've created multiple rooms, and then I've also been building just tons of stuff, a lot of woodworking, a lot of building and crafting things. And it's just great. I built a duck coop, a duck house, a chicken coop, and that's all within the last several months, about 6 months of this year. And I've also been traveling back and forth across the country. I've traveled more times in the last year and a half than I have in my entire life combined. Bar none, by far. So I've put tons and tons and tons of miles. It's about 2,000 miles from my house to California. And then I spend a week in California and then fly back 2,000 miles. And then I've driven that a couple of times as well. So I've just put tons and tons and tons and tons of time into traveling the last year and a half. And it's been great. It's super stressful for sure. And partially because of that, my games that I played this year have been a lot lower of a count than I have in previous years. Every year, every time I beat a game, I finish and complete a story game where I see credits. I notate it down. I have a list of every game that I've beaten this year. And normally, within the year, I surpass around at least 60 games that I have beaten. And unfortunately, this year, it's just been so much less because of traveling. And so I've beaten 41 games this year. That's full on completed, seen the story all the way through, and saw credits. And so before I get to my actual top 10 list, I want to actually just break down the games and go through the list of games that I've completed this year, starting from January and ending today. which is actually New Year's Eve. So I'm recording this on New Year's Eve because life has been busy, man. So Bugsnax is the first game. I did not care for it at all. Maneater was the second game that I completed, and I actually really liked it. We were living we sold our house in October of last year, and we did not move until January. So we were living with my in-laws for a few months, and I played this and finished it right after the new year started. And Maneater is such an awesome game. I really liked that game more than I thought I was going to. Then I completed Burnout Paradise Remastered, which I love the Burnout series, but I do not like Paradise as much as most people do. I think it's one of the poorest versions of Burnout. The open world is not very fun. The racing, when it was going from point to point, you have this huge open world, and when I originally played it, and this is why I got soured on Burnout Paradise, is because when you failed a race, you had to drive all the way back. And most of these races, especially later on, you were driving across the map to finish a race. So if you crashed at the very end and you got third or fourth place, at the very end of the race, you were all the way across the map. You had to drive all the way back to complete it, and you had to remember where the starting line was and all that. With Remastered and, the updates that they did put out eventually after I finished the game originally when it came out on the 360, it was 360. They did not have the menu system. They have a menu system where you can just kind of hit start and go to the menu and restart race, and you'll load into the new race. So you can do it like a normal game should, but back then they couldn't do that. And so I was really soured on it. I came back to it with the remastered version on PC. It was fun, but just not as fun as a lot of people say. I still think Burnout Revenge is actually my favorite Burnout game now. Takedown or 3, Burnout 3 was and is amazing and was my favorite, but after replaying it a couple years ago, Burnout Revenge is just 3 cranked up to 11. It's awesome. Then the fourth game I played is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and that was a re-release that was supposed to come out last year, came out at the beginning of this year, and it's a really fun brawler type game. I love it. Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I finished. I was pretty much finished with it, and I believe it was on my Game of the Year last year. I think number 10, I can't remember, but it's a great game. I did not think I was going to like it as much as I did. Then the sixth game that I played was GoldenEye 007, the HD remake. This was a weird one because this was rumored for years and years and years and years and years. And it was supposed to come out in like 2007, 2008 on the 360. Microsoft, of course, bought Rare, and Rare made GoldenEye for the N64. And it was one of those, this is the game you have to have. It was a system seller. I remember getting GoldenEye on Christmas that year, and it was amazing. So it was the game that you had to have for having an N64 in that time period. And so Rare was supposed to be remaking it for Xbox and Microsoft, and for whatever reason, it got scrapped. I don't know if it was licensing issues. I'm sure part of that reason was, but it never came to complete fruition. It never got released. Luckily, someone finally leaked the full game, and I think that it's like 97% complete or 99% complete with a few bugs here and there, but it is a full HD remake where you have the toggle switch, which I love when remake games do this. Original graphics, and you hit a bumper button or something like that, select or back or right bumper, and you can switch to the new graphics back and forth on the fly. It's amazing. Hitman 3 came out and was the next one, number 7. Number 8 was Little Nightmares 2. Number 9 was Monster Jam Steel Titans. And I want to talk about this for just a moment. I love monster trucks, but I have not really paid attention to them in probably a couple decades. When I was about 5-10 years old, monster trucks were all the rage. And I'm a 10-year-old boy, of course, I'm going to love monster trucks. But I haven't paid attention to them in the years since. And the Monster Jam Steel Titans 2 was coming out, and I was like, I think I either owned it or I got it on CD keys for like 99 cents. And so I was like, I'm just trying to find something to play while we were still just finishing up moving. We moved in at the very end of January. And so this is like the first month that we were in our house, and Steel Titans Monster Jam, I was like, oh, I'll play it. And I really enjoyed it. It was very buggy in certain aspects, but I really, really enjoyed it. And then the 10th game that I beat was Monster Jam Steel Titans 2, the sequel that came out this year. I did not like it as much. I thought it had really bad physics. But, you know, it was like a 4-hour experience to finish the campaign. I had fun with it. Then I got the Climb 2 on VR on Oculus Quest 2. Man, that's a great game. I really liked the Climb series. It's a rock climbing game where you are standing up and you are moving your arms like in grabbing onto ledges like you're climbing, but it's all in VR. It's really nice looking. It's very presentation style over substance type of game, but it's really, really fun. I highly suggest the Climb series if you want a good graphically looking game experience for climbing. Climby is another one that I would say is a better overall game, but it's more of community driven and doesn't look as nice, but both of them, rock climbing in VR is super fun. The 12th game is the Panzer Dragoon remake, the original Panzer Dragoon that came out on Sega Saturn. They remade it, and I played through that, and it was a very short game. It took about 45 minutes to complete. And then Virtual Boy Wario Land. I played Virtual Boy games on the Oculus Quest 2, and this is the way to play Virtual Boy without getting the crazy headache, without being cumbersome, the way it was meant to be played. You can play it on an emulator on a flat screen on TV and be fine, but you're not going to get the full gimmick of depth perception that you do with an actual Virtual Boy. This one emulates it perfectly, and it's in VR. It's awesome. Then a weird little game called Rain on Your Parade came out on Game Pass. I loaded it up, and man, I had a blast. You play as a rain cloud, and you kind of just rain over stuff and destroy stuff and shock people and do all this stuff. You get power-ups, so you get lightning and thunder. It's a really cool game. I highly suggest it. Then I played the Destroy All Humans remaster. That was the 15th game that I played through. I remember playing through, or partially playing through Destroy All Humans on the original Xbox, but I never got super far and finished it. And this remaster is definitely the way to play it, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I remember going, this guy's doing a really bad Jack Nicholson voice acting. It really bothered me when I played it originally on the original Xbox, but with the remaster, it didn't bother me as much anymore. It looks really nice. It plays very well. I highly suggest it as a remaster game to play. And then I went back and played and finished Banjo-Kazooie. Not the N64 version, but actually the Xbox 360 Live Arcade version on my Xbox One. So it looks nice. It's all in HD, it's up-res to 4K or whatever. And it's Banjo-Kazooie. What can I say? It's an awesome game. I love collectathons in games when there's a purpose to it and it's not overly ridiculous. So I did spend a good chunk of hours playing through and collecting every single thing in the game. But at the end of the day, it was just a really fun and enjoyable 3D platformer, and I love 3D platformers, as you'll hear later on. Then I played Subnautica Below Zero. It came out of early access after being in early access for a few years, and man, this game would be totally fine, but there's a VR mod for it, and playing Subnautica in VR is absolutely a must-do if you own a VR headset. So Subnautica Below Zero is actually a VR. It does not have VR, and it's a sequel to original Subnautica. They didn't have VR, and they put some people modded in VR, and it's just, again, you'll hear me talk about it a little bit later on. Then PlayStation started doing some weird stuff where they've been putting out a lot of their first-party or third-party games on PC. So you have Horizon Zero Dawn, you have the Uncharted series coming to PC. God of War is going to come, the 2018 God of War is going to come to PC on Steam. And they released Days Gone, the zombie survival action bike riding game, motorcycle riding zombie game, Days Gone. And I played so much of that. It took me about a little over 42 and a half hours to finish. And I dumped a lot of hours into that game, and I'm surprised how much I really, really liked it. It was so different than what I thought it was going to be. A lot of people hated it when it came out, and I don't know why. I think they were just trying to get through a game in way too quick of a time, and they just powerhouse through it and said, oh, this is just generic and blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's really good. So once I finished Days Gone, my number 19 game that I completed this year, something that has been on my list for years, Yakuza 0. I bought it back in 2018 when it first came out on PC after my friend Andrew devoured that game the year prior. It was like one of his top favorite games of that year. And then in 2018, they released it on PC and I bought it. And I dumped, I think, like 19 or 20 hours into it, and I just didn't finish it. And part of the reason why I had an issue with it was, it's very cutscene heavy, so the control gets taken away from you, and you have to watch these pretty long, drawn-out cutscenes. They're amazing. They're phenomenal. The graphics are so good, but it was just at a time where I didn't want to watch cutscenes of a game. I wanted to play the game more. And again, I travel for my job primarily, and so I would get into the story and then have to put it down for like a week or two and try to come back, and it was just really difficult. And my wife doesn't really like the Yakuza series, so it was really hard for me to get around to playing. But I finally finished it. It took about 35 hours in Yakuza 0, started my full playthrough of the series. I played through Yakuza 0, and then I immediately loaded up Yakuza Kiwami, which is the remake of the original first Yakuza game. Yakuza 0 is a prequel, came out a couple years ago. Yakuza came out back on the PS2. It's a very long series. There's at least 8 games in the entire series. Kiwami is a remake of the first game. So I played through that. That took about 28 hours. And then I immediately loaded up Yakuza Kiwami 2, which is a remake of Yakuza 2 on the PS2. And that took me another 26 and a half hours to complete. And then after I was done with that, I played through Yakuza 3, a remastered version on Xbox Game Pass that they put out. And that took me about 18 hours. And then I went into Yakuza 4 and played through that, and that took about 17 hours. And then I started playing through Yakuza 5. And unfortunately, that's where I've stopped with the playthrough series so far. I intend to get back to it. But I didn't get burnt out of the Yakuza series. I got burnt out of the way that they tell the story in the Yakuza 4 and 5. And I think 3 too. I can't remember. No. Yeah, I think 3 and then 2 and then 1. I can't remember. It's been a while. I played through this in July. I played through the Yakuza series in June and July. So Yakuza 4 and 5 at least do this weird thing where you're playing through the game as the main series protagonist, which is Kiryu Kazuma. And with 4 and 5, you actually play as multiple characters. You play through with Kiryu for a little bit, and then you move on to another character, and you play through his storyline for a little bit. And then you move on to another character, and you play through his storyline for a little bit. And then you move on to another character, and you play through his storyline a little bit. And then you go back to Kiryu. And I did not really care for the other characters' storylines that much. Some of them are really good, and if it was allowing me to switch back and forth to the different characters, kind of like in Grand Theft Auto 5, where you can pick and choose characters to swap between as, I would much rather have done that. But they full on stop you from playing through that character's storyline because they're all kind of going all at the same time. And then you have to do this. So in Yakuza 5, I was playing through it, I'm playing as Kiryu, and then I move on to this other character who's a really interesting character, but his playstyle is very different. The movesets are very different, and I just wasn't wanting to play through that character's story. I wanted to see Kiryu's story fully progress. I was really interested in what was going on in his life. And I just didn't want to play as this character. So I put it down for a little bit. I had to travel. I came back. And then more new games were coming out. And so I put those ahead of Yakuza. And unfortunately, I haven't gotten back to it. So I have to finish Yakuza 5. I have to start and finish Yakuza 6. And then go into Like a Dragon. And then I will be caught up on the main Yakuza stories and games and finish that series off. And then there's the Judgment series, which I don't know if I'll play. I really don't have a desire to play them right now anyways. I could be getting burnout on these Yakuza series, but not just yet. I'm just burnout on the concept of not playing as the character I want to play as. So I played through Yakuza 0, which is the prequel, Yakuza Kiwami, which is the remake of Yakuza 1 on the PS2, Yakuza Kiwami 2, which is a remake of Yakuza 2 on PS2, Yakuza 3 Remastered, and then Yakuza 4. And so the 24th game that I played through this year was 12 minutes. And man, you've heard my rant on that on the previous episodes, podcasts, way back when I finished it earlier in August. And don't play that game, it sucks. The 25th game that I played this year was Psychonauts 2, and I'm going to talk more about that later on. But man, one of my favorite games of all time, my favorite game of all time is Psychonauts. So Psychonauts 2, the sequel, should have been pretty good, and it was. So like I said, I'll talk about that a little bit later. WarioWare Get It Together. I love WarioWare games, and this one just was not up to what I think it should be. That series is just getting too formulaic. I hate saying that because I feel like I've been saying that a lot lately about a lot of games, but it's very true. There's a formula that works. So you make this game, you put a sequel out in very similar style, and it works again. Why wouldn't you just keep trying to do the same thing over and over again if it's guaranteed to make money or perceived to make money? Unfortunately, just WarioWare needs to change it up at some point. Then I played through Portal with my wife in September, and that was my third playthrough of the game. I don't play through games a lot, multiple times. Once I finish a game, I move on to the next one, and I very rarely ever come back to a game unless it sticks out. We were talking about games to play together, and we talked about Portal 2 as one of those co-op games that it's like on everyone's list of best co-op games to play with someone. And so she was looking at that and she's like, what's Portal? And I'm like, you don't know Portal? Oh man, let me tell you about it. It's amazing. So we played through Portal, and we've been playing through Portal 2 as well. We just didn't finish Portal 2. So number 27 is Portal. And number 28 is a little tiny game. It took me about 20 minutes to play through. It's called Swallow the Sea. It is free on Steam. It's more of a tech demo / mini game thing than anything else, but it's pretty cool. Then I played through Cruisin' Blast on the Switch. I enjoy the cruising games. Cruisin' USA, Cruisin' World, Cruisin' Exotica. And then they ported this game Cruisin' Blast. It was an arcade game back in 2017, I believe it was released, but it was released this year on the Switch, and I was like, there's not really anything else going on, so I'll play through that. And I didn't care for it. I know a lot of people really love it. I think it's a very, it's almost on rails in a way. If you play through it, it doesn't feel like there's a lot to it. It's a very eye candy type of game to me, as opposed to a racing series. Number 30. 30th game that I played and finished to completion this year. Metroid Zero Mission. Again, another series game that I started off going, man, I want to get into this game series, but I've never liked it. But my friend Sean is a really awesome person because he knows the games that I like before or will like before I know that I'm going to like them. He's been trying to get me into these types of series forever, the Metroidvania series. I'm going to stop saying it. I think that's going to be the last time I talk about the series with that genre title, because it's not a genre title. It's just saying here's these two games mashed up that are similar. So these games where you backtrack a lot and you progress by unlocking certain things and you have a map and all that. So just like Castlevania, he told me, oh, you got to play Castlevania, you're going to love it. And I finally did, and I loved it. And then he was like, oh, you got to play the Ori series, you're going to love it. And I played the Ori series, and I loved it. Oh, you got to play Hollow Knight, you're going to love it. And I loved it. So why wouldn't I believe him when he tells me Metroid is a series that I'm going to love? So I started playing Metroid Zero Mission because I found out on Reddit that I saw this post. I was scrolling through one night at a hotel, and I'm just sitting there alone and scrolling through Reddit before I go to bed to get up for work the next morning. And I see this post about Metroid Dread, because the Metroid Dread was coming out this year. And Metroid has this timeline, and it's kind of a little bit weird. It's not super easy to follow, because you have Metroid that came out on the NES, then Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo, and then you had Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Prime, Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, Metroid Prime Trilogy, Metroid... what was the other one? Samus Returns, and then Dread and Freedom Force, I believe, is the other one, and then Metroid Other M. There's a lot of Metroid games, so there needs to be some sort of timeline. Some person made this picture, and I just saw it, and I went, oh, that's the timeline of Metroid games. Okay. Metroid Zero Mission is a remake of the original NES Metroid. And I didn't know that at the time. I believe I talked about this on the other podcast, so I'll kind of condense it, because this is not just me writing down every game that I played this year and that's it. I still got to talk about my top 10 list. So I played through Metroid Zero Mission because I found out, I did not know, it was a remake of the original Metroid. And I've tried playing the original Metroid, and it's just too difficult for modern me to play without spending my entire life devoting a notebook to writing maps down and stuff like that. So played through Zero Mission. I loved it. And I went, I need to play more of this. So we went to the picture to see what the second game, you would think Metroid is... Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo would be the second one. If Metroid on NES was the first, Metroid 2 has to be Super Metroid. It's not. It's a Game Boy original game called Samus Returns, and it's not a great game to play either. So I went looking around. They remade it. Nintendo remade it a couple years ago on the 3DS, but there was another version of it called AM2R, which is a fan remake. And I very rarely ever do fan remakes, but man, I remember hearing about it. I downloaded it back when it came out in 2016, 2017, but I never played through it. Or never played it, actually. I just downloaded it because I knew it was going to get taken offline at some point. And it did, obviously. So AM2R stands for Another Metroid 2 Remake, and that's Metroid 2. And it's so good. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So I had to play more of it, and I did. But there's a couple other games I was playing at the time, too. So number 32 is Far Cry 6. Man, I love the Far Cry series, but again, just like just like a couple of those other games like WarioWare, it's formulaic at this point. It's just the same game with a new coat of paint, a new location, a new bad guy villain, and the ending's terrible. The ending is absolutely awful, and it doesn't ruin the game, the full 44 hours of gameplay before the last hour of gameplay, but it did not help it at all. It taints the experience, in my opinion. And then number 33 is Guardians of the Galaxy. Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, I'll talk more about. It's phenomenal. Then Unpacking, a little tiny 2-hour game on Game Pass, which is one of those relaxing, chill out type of games. But I'm not really liking those types of games anymore. I feel like I've played way too many of them. They're very similar, and you play the first level of the game and you've played the entire game with just less content or different content later on. I think it's a nice game, but it's not in my top 10, that's for sure. So after playing through Metroid Zero Mission and AM2R, then I moved on to Super Metroid, which is technically Metroid 3. And boy, oh boy, I like the game. I felt great about finally completing a game that so many people played. I remember my friend Andrew playing it when we were kids, and I just did not get it. And I played it a couple years ago trying to get it again, and I just did not get it. I finally unlocked that part of my brain to understand the Metroid series and the backtracking elements. It is not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but there was definitely a few points where I got frustrated and I got stuck. And I had to look up, where do I go from here? Because it's just not as straightforward as you would think. And the game's so big and takes so long to backtrack sometimes that it was just kind of a little frustrating. Then I played through Forza Horizon 5, which I love the Horizon series. I think Forza Horizon is a great series. It's way better than the Forza Motorsport versions. But I'll talk more about that a little bit later. Metroid Fusion was number 37, another Game Boy game, or Game Boy Advance game, just like Zero Mission. And then I was finally ready for number 38, which is Metroid Dread. And dude, I love Metroid Dread. I think it's a great, great, great game. Then I played Deathloop, which I did not think I was going to play or like. When it got announced, I thought it was a PS5 only game, and then it was PS5 console exclusive, I believe. But there's also a PC version. And so I did not play it when it got released, but a couple months later, it was on sale, and I said, why the heck not? And I played through that, and I really enjoyed it. And then Halo Infinite for number 40. I haven't played a Halo game and enjoyed it in a long time. I did not even play through Halo 5. But Halo Infinite, I think, with their change up, like Breath of the Wild, where they said, here's our Halo series. We're going to change up the gameplay aspects and do something new and different. And I think the open world setting really helps that game. It's not absolutely amazing. It's not in my top 10, but I really did enjoy Halo Infinite. And then we come to the last game that I finished this year. Number 41, New Super Lucky's Tale. I finished Halo Infinite. It's a couple days before Christmas. I'm sitting there going, man, I'm building out my list for top 10 and stuff. And I wanted to play something, but I did not think I was going to play through another game. I thought that Halo Infinite was going to be it. Go out on number 40. But number 41, man, New Super Lucky's Tale. I really like the Lucky's Tale series. I think their naming scheme is garbage because you had Lucky's Tale that came out for as an exclusive for Oculus Rift. And then they had Super Lucky's Tale, which I did not know was a new game. I think that's ridiculous to make a VR exclusive game and then do a sequel and put it on Xbox and consoles and stuff. but they did. And then calling something new Super Lucky's Tale, which is just a port / remaster with new update. Like it's the whole Tomb Raider thing where they did Tomb Raider, like the new 2013 Tomb Raider, and then Shadow of the Tomb Raider, or Rise in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. And then they said, oh, here's our definitive edition where we changed the face model. I don't know why they changed the face model. It makes no sense. So they changed some models and kind of streamlined the story, I guess, or something for new Super Lucky's Tale. But new Super Lucky's Tale is really, really, really good. So that is the games that I completed this year. And now we are ready. We're going to take a little break. And when we come back, I'm going to get into my actual top 10. So we'll start at around 35 minutes into this podcast and finally get to my games of the year, my top 10 list, games of the year for 2020.
Toxic illusion, falling deeper, spiral through time. Static delusion, this is where we do or die. And I've been here before, face to face with the gun. Up against all the odds, and I'm the only one. Oh, I've been here before, it must be true. This is death at the beginning of the end again. It's deja vu. In this game of survival that never ends. What to do when the bullet is the same, but the kill is ours. Keep on trying to fight, but the dark consumes the light. Every time, and I've been here before, face to face with the gun, up against all the odds, and I'm the only one. Oh, I've been here before, it must be true, it must be true. This is death at the beginning of the end again. It's deja vu. In this game of survival that never ends. Deja vu, deja vu, deja vu, deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. Deja vu, deja vu, deja vu, deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. What to do when the bullet is the same, but the kill is always new. This is death at the beginning of the end again. It's deja vu. In this game of survival that never ends.
All right, welcome back. So, top 10 list games of the year. My number 10, Deathloop. I am not an arcane games type of person. I really have not gelled or whatever you want to say. I really have not liked a lot of their games. On the surface, they seem really cool. I'm talking games like Dishonored and Dishonored 2. When Dishonored came out, it made a really big impression on me at the time. I remember the E3, trailer with the "What Are You Gonna Do with the Drunken Sailor" song playing in the background. I love that song. I don't know why. It's just one of those sea shanty songs that I've always enjoyed. And then Dishonored 2 came out, and I didn't really like it, or I didn't even play it, because when Dishonored came out, I played through part of it on 360, and then I finally said, screw this. Controller support became a big thing, standard across everything at that time, and so I switched over to PC and replayed like the first 5 hours of that game again, and I just did not like the stealth of that game. And I knew and I read about the game getting a bad difficulty if you kill people, and so you're supposed to save a lot of people or just sneak around and not kill as many people, and you get a better ending. And I thought that was stupid, so I just never finished it. And then Dishonored 2 came out. I didn't even play that. And then Prey came out, the 2017 Prey, and I was always pissed off about Prey being not a sequel like Prey 2 should have been. And there's already a game in 2006 called Prey about this Native American guy that gets taken up by aliens, and that was a really fun. I like 2006's Prey. I really enjoyed it at the time. I'm sure I wouldn't enjoy it as much. That's why I don't replay games all that often either, is because I have that memory. I enjoyed it at the time. I don't need to replay it and go, ugh, this doesn't hold up or whatever. I think tastes change as you progress through life in games as well. So I don't need to replay Prey 2006 and hear or notice bad things about it. Oh, it just seems super empty, or it seems super linear. Who cares? At the time, it was novel and amazing and super fun. So when they announced Deathloop, like I said earlier, I thought it was a PS5 exclusive game. So I just kind of wrote it off going, well, I can't find a PS5 anyways. I still don't own one over a year later. And I don't see myself getting one anytime in the next 6 months unless something crazy happens with Amazon, where they just say, all right, there's millions of PS5s on Amazon. Just go pick it out and have it delivered to your house in a couple hours. Then I'll do it, and then I'll get one. But I just can't get one right now, so whatever. Luckily, it was on PC, and everyone was saying, well, just wait for Game Pass. But that's a year away, and I didn't want to wait a year for Deathloop because I like playing games when they're new, when everyone's talking about them, so I can listen to podcasts and not have something spoiled, not have to not understand what they're talking about with the games. I like playing games and listening to people talk about the games that I'm playing. So I decided to just buy it on a Steam sale for half off, and I went, sure, I'll pay $30 for Deathloop, and man, it's a really good game. So you're going to yourselves, Ryan, what the heck is Deathloop? You keep talking about this game and talking about the developers, how you like some of their games and not like some. What is Deathloop, and why is it number 10 on my top 10 list? So Deathloop is a all the rage type of genre game this year, which is a loop game. Loop games are Groundhog's Day. Just like the film Bill Murray, where he relives the same day over and over again. Same thing with this game. You are a character named Colt. You wake up on an island and you have amnesia, because of course. And you go, what's going on? And you find this radio where this girl Juliana is talking to you, and she's talking about, why don't you remember this stuff? And everything that you do, she's critiquing. You already know the code to this door. No, I don't. I have amnesia. I don't even know my name. Your name is Colt. Come on. No, I don't understand. Why is my name Colt? And just the back and forth and banter. It's actually really well written. I'm surprised with how jokey the dialogue is, how self-referential it is, and stuff like that. I'm usually kind of turned off by that stuff in games, but for whatever reason, it really does elevate the game to a much more enjoyable experience when these characters are talking back and forth throughout your gameplay experience. So you are Colt, you have amnesia, and throughout the game you are trying to figure out who you are, what your purpose is, and when you die, you restart back at the island. And so you go, man, I died, but I'm reliving the same thing over again. I can change it up this time, and it's Groundhog's Day. So the reason why I liked this game so much is because it took multiple parts of certain games that I really enjoy. The humor of a lot of the characters in the game are very Borderlands-esque. I really like Borderlands. I know a lot of people have an issue with the writing. I haven't played Borderlands in years, so I don't remember the writing being super grating. I think some of the characters came off as a little bit annoying, but it never bothered me. So that's a lot of the characters in these games, or in this game, Deathloop, is that Borderlands over-exaggeration style. A lot of the characters that you're trying to kill to break the loop is over the top, super cranky, super whiny, super annoying and jerky, and just diva-esque. So I really like the characters in this game and the writing. It reminded me of Borderlands. The gameplay style is very Hitman-like, where it's a almost clockwork type of gameplay style. You are walking around the levels. So the way this game works is you have about 4 or 5, I think it's 5 different levels to choose from. And each level has a different time period that you can visit it in. You can either visit it in the morning, noon, afternoon, and evening. And anytime you visit one of these levels, you're stuck in there for that time period. So if I want to go to the dock portion of the dock level, I can visit it in the morning, but I am locked into that level in the morning time, and I cannot go to the mountain part of the level, mountain level in the morning time on that day. So you're kind of locked into this time schedule. And each person that you have to kill, they're, I can't remember what they're called off the top of my head, like, not adversaries, it starts with an A, I believe. But there's these 7 people that you have to kill, and you have to kill them all within a single day. So you can't die, you can't restart the day. So you got to figure out where they're going to be, where they're most vulnerable at during the day, and what level. And it creates this type of Hitman time where you're like, okay, this person is over here at this time period, so I got to make sure that I'm at that level at that time of the day, and I got to figure out a way to kill them. So there's like this one person giving a speech, and you can snipe them from super far away if you go to that level at in the morning time. And then you got to figure out, oh, this other guy is throwing a party at his castle. You got to go to the castle level at nighttime because that's the only time he's available. He's locked in his castle the entire time. The only time the doors open are in the evening. So it's this weird puzzle clockwork type of setting where you have to figure out where someone's going to be, when someone's going to be, and how to get them at a certain specific time. And that's the whole game. And it took me like 25 hours to finish the game. And I thought the time loop, restarting, that's what really bothers me. I hate run-based games like Rogue Legacy or Binding of Isaac type of games where you play through, spend 45 minutes playing through this level, you die, and then you have to restart over again. I just don't find that very enjoyable. But if you die, you still have all your experience, and you can kind of fast track stuff and do other mission objectives like Hitman. on your different runs. So you go, okay, I want to focus on this guy, and I'm going to just follow him throughout all the levels, throughout all the time zones, and figure out where he's most vulnerable. You do that, you restart the day, and then you pick a new person, and you spend that entire day loop trying to pinpoint where they are most vulnerable at, and you just do all these extra things. There are other additional optional objectives that you can do as well, but unfortunately, they really don't do anything. You get these power-ups, or slabs that they call them, where you can blink, or like in the Dishonored series, where you can blink from point A to point B in an instant, teleportation, or you can slow down time, or you can do other things. I can't remember all the different power-ups because I didn't use a whole lot of them. I just think that they weren't as useful as the creators wanted them to be. I'm a very run-and-gun type of person, so when you give me a gun, I'm going to use it, and I can usually just kill everyone. Headshots and things like that. Relatively easy. I'm not saying I'm the best gamer in the world. I definitely died a lot of times in this game, but not as many as I thought I was going to, and I didn't have as big of an issue. I really did like clearing out an entire level in a certain time period. So like morning time, I was in the docks and I killed literally everyone in that level, and just had free range to kind of scope out everything and find out where everything was, because no one was in that level anymore because I literally killed everyone. So very Hitman-esque. And then the other part, the reason why I really like that game is because it has this weird 60s psychedelic vibe to its art style, kind of like We Happy Few. I wanted to love We Happy Few, and I never played it because I heard so many bad things. I would like to go back to it. At this point, now that the game's out of early access, it's finished. But I really like that, 60s psychedelic British style. I think it's really interesting for a game, and not a lot of games, except for We Happy Few, is like one of the only games that I can think of that uses that art style very, very well. So that is number 10.
You thought I'm dead and done. You'll know for sure tonight. I'm rising from my shallow grave, and I'm holding my switchblade tight, 'cause you can blast me with dynamite, but I won't rest in pieces. I'm a revenant, baby, and I'll be back. It's gonna be one pale morning, all middle of the night, when I come round to take your life. I know it will feel alright, 'cause you can bury me underground, paved over for good measure. I'm a revenant, baby, and I'll be back. He's a revenant. 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 Be sure to watch your six. I'm out with the boys tonight, and if we see your cheating face, well, you're in for a fight, my darling, 'cause you can try to drown me, babe, but I won't sleep with the fishes. I'm a revenant lady, and I'll be back. He's a revenant. 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 Watch out now! He's a revenant. I'm a revenant.
So Deathloop is number 10. Number 9 is a game that I've always wanted to get into, but I was afraid to get into that series. And over the last couple of years, they've been remaking this series with better controls, better graphics, literal top to bottom remake versions of these games. I'm, of course, talking about the Resident Evil series. Played Resident Evil 2 a couple years ago when they did that remake, and I really loved it. It was freaky, it was scary. I was a big sissy at some points of it, but I really liked it. And then the next year, they came out with Resident Evil 3, and I played through that, and I did not like it as much. I thought it was a pretty bad remake, all things considered. I hated how short it was. I think it's like 3 hours long. Like, it's a super short, like, one sitting type of game. And I just went, I'm not replaying this a second time to get better weapons. I finished the game, and it wasn't that hard. I was really put off by it. So I was a little wary. But Resident Evil 4 is a game that everyone talks about. Just like the Metroid series, I really don't like when people talk about game series that I have no idea about. It's a bummer for me when I hear people go, oh my gosh, Resident Evil 4, of course, that's a landmark game. It should be in the pantheon of games. And stuff like that. I get bummed out because I have no point of reference. I don't know about that game. And I think about 2014, again, controller support on the PC was now a full thing, which it wasn't before. And so I tried to play Resident Evil 4 because, again, my friend Andrew, my best friend, would talk about it all the time being so good. And I was like, fine, I'll try playing it. I have that on PC. There was this HD mod that was coming out at the time. And I was like, all right, cool. And I would look up and they're like, oh, we're almost finished, with this level or whatever. I'm like, oh, it's actually a not finished mod. Well, I'll just, I played a little bit of it and I just didn't like the control scheme. And then the mod wasn't finished. So I said, I'll just wait. How long? What, 6 months or so? They're still not done with the mod. It is the end of literally the last day of 2021. And that HD mod is still not out yet for the PC version. So I just threw my hands up and I said, I'm either going to play it without that mod or whatever. So Capcom announced that they were going to do a Oculus Quest 2 exclusive VR version of Resident Evil. And I said, I don't like paying for VR exclusives full price. I think VR exclusives to begin with, especially if you want to make it, obviously it's a VR version of the game. So it's going to be locked down to VR and not just playable on PC with a controller, just like Half-Life Alyx. So I get that, but I'm talking about exclusive to a certain headset. Like when Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin came out and they're like, it's exclusive to PlayStation VR, which is the worst possible headset to have. It is the lowest tier of VR, except for, Google Cardboard and garbage like that, which isn't real VR. But I was like, man, come on. So I had to wait until that VR exclusivity was up to play Rhombus of Ruin on the Vive, or the Vive Pro or the Index. And it's a much better experience because I have all those headsets and it's on PC, so it looks better. It plays better. It doesn't have as many issues. And it's just like, why lock it down to a subset of a genre? Like, why? I don't understand that. So I was like, I don't want to pay full price for this lockdown version when it might come to Steam VR, but who knows, with VR exclusive stuff, who knows? And so I got a coupon because I get these coupons from Oculus all the time. It's really funny. When a new game comes out, I usually get a 30% coupon. And I got it like a day before the game was released. And so I was like, all right, cool. I'll just save this and buy Resident Evil 4 for 30% off on launch day. And I did. And I loaded it up. And it is straight up Resident Evil 4 but with a VR mode attached to it. And it's not like cobbled together. It's built for VR. You can use the controllers, the hand controllers, to use it like a joystick to move around. But they integrated a first-person motion control scheme to it, so you can physically move your arm to where your waist is, squeeze the trigger, and pull out a knife. And then you can use your arm in real life to swing around and swing that knife. Instead of just pushing a button to swing, press X to swing like a normal video game, you can use motion controls to swing the knife. Or you can grab your shoulder and pull off like a bandolier and pull off a grenade and literally toss the grenade by using that motion. This is what motion controls do well. The Wii was here's the start of it, but like waggle controls and all that 1-to-1 ratio is not very good. But now it is real life motions to make it more immersive, which is really, really interesting. So you've got Resident Evil 4 in VR, fully playable by standing up, turning around, swinging your arms like you're having a knife, throwing grenades, reaching over your shoulder to grab out a shotgun. It's amazing. It's also terrifying in some cases. I am a big wuss when it comes to scary horror type video games. I never liked the Resident Evil series, but the curiosity of who I am is more prevalent in bigger than my fear factor. So as scared as I was to play these games in 1 o'clock with the lights out and a VR headset on, I still played through it, and it's so good. I didn't play through the whole thing, unfortunately. Just life got in the way. Multiple in-laws came visiting. We've had all the different holidays. We had Thanksgiving, we had Christmas, now we've got New Year's. I just didn't have the time to, and want also, because I've had so many other projects going on, building duck coop and duck houses and workbenches and videos and all this stuff, that I just didn't finish it yet. And I knew I wanted to devote hours and hours to playing it late at night, and just late night just became something different in the last couple of months. So unfortunately, I haven't finished it. I'll finish it soon, and that will be on my list of games I completed for 2022, I'm sure. So that's Resident Evil VR. It is so good. If you have a VR headset, it's a must-own for the Quest 2. It's only on the Quest 2 for right now, and I'm sure for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. But honestly, if you don't have a VR headset, I would say pick up a Quest 2. It is the only VR headset you should use at this point. It's super cheap, and because it's wireless, there's an application called Virtual Desktop. It's like $15 on the Quest store. You buy that, and it's not a game. It is a tool to allow you to wirelessly link up to your PC and use your computer, not just your desktop in VR, but also any VR game that you own on Steam, on Epic Games Store. You are able to play wirelessly on the Quest, and that in and of itself is the biggest selling point for the Quest 2 versus... So I have a Vive Index. I don't use it. It's the best PC VR headset on the market with the Knuckles controllers and all that. It is nowhere near as usable for me as the Quest 2. I use the Quest 2 all the time. I haven't loaded up the Index. It's been sitting on a box. Now it's sitting in my server rack, just hanging, not doing anything, because it is not worth it to set it up with all the light boxes. And I have the light boxes set up in the basement. I have it set up next to my computer so I can use it right now. I could put the Vive on, the Index on, and play PC VR with the highest fidelity headset. I still rather use the Quest 2. It's just so much more easy to use. It's great. So enough talking about VR, but Resident Evil 4 VR is my number 9 game of the year for 2020. Moving on to number 8. This is a game that I did not finish, unfortunately, because it's not finishable. It is still in early access, but it is a game that, this is my big issue. I kind of always sided with Giant Bomb, where the game needed to have a version 1.0 release for early access to be considered for Game of the Year. I am one person doing this for fun. I'm not making money or anything like that. This is not my job. It's just for fun. But I do adhere to some rules. But when the game is basically finished in a full state without the extra stuff and any updates that are coming out for that game in early access are just kind of like, oh, we're fixing bugs. Oh, we're adding some little content here or there. When it's basically feature complete in early access, I let it slide. Also, because there has just not been that many games coming out this year, just like last year. Gaming is in a weird spot with game publishers and releases. They don't take the risks like they used to. They don't publish hundreds of games anymore. They publish 1 or 2 big games and maybe if we're lucky, a middle tier type of or indie game they'll publish, and that's it. Games right now are one big game per publisher usually per year, and everything else is indie games, and that's it. That's really what video games are right now, and it kind of sucks. So look, up until a couple months ago, there was not that many games that even came out that I played through that came out this year. Deathloop is a game that just came out a couple months ago. Same thing with Resident Evil 4 VR. Both of those games, and a couple more that I'm going to be talking about, just came out a couple months ago. The most of this year, if you go back to earlier when I was talking about all the games that I played through this year, there was only a handful that actually were released. Everything else, most of my games that I've beat and completed this year are older games, because nothing is coming out right now, and it sucks that that's happening. Not anything we can do about it, but it just sucks. So I was really struggling. Valheim came out this year, and it's my number 8, and it released to unbelievable critical acclaim, and I partially, I'd say maybe 80% of that is because there's literally nothing else to play. There's literally nothing else coming out. Valheim, I don't know why I call it Valve. Valheim is a game that came out at the perfect point where everyone was wanting video games and no one was releasing them. So this team released this game, and it is one of those games that is make your own fun, which I have a hard time with. It's not Minecraft where it's like literally there's nothing to do but create and build and explore, but that's a lot of what this game is. But there's a lot of enemies that you can go and fight, and you get resources, and you build houses and towns and all this stuff, and you fight these bosses that you come across. Valheim is so enjoyable to just run around. I've dropped I think 30 plus hours into this game in the first 2 months it came out. And I would just spend hours at night playing through and going, all right, I'm going to have just my equipment, and I'm just going to go in a straight line to this corner of the map and see how far I can get. And once I'm about to die, or if I get over encumbered, then I'm going to come back to my base, drop everything, heal up, repair stuff and move out again. And I just did that over and over and over and just explored. And you find all these new bases. And the map system is like that Fog of War where you progress and you move through the map, and it gradually increases its field of view. You can kind of uncover and see everything, because when you bring up the map when you first start, there's nothing there. It's just uncharted territory. And as you move throughout the game, you uncover more and more stuff. And so like I would come across, I'd be hiking through this field for a couple minutes. Off in the distance, I see a little tower. So I go to that tower, and there's a couple skeletons inhabiting that tower. So I kill all the skeletons, and there's a couple, chests and doors in a frame of this like tower that I can basically build a little camp in. So I build the little camp, I build the bed, and light a fire and make it a nice little house so I can rest up throughout the rainy night, and then wake up the next morning, eat some food, get some health, and go out and do it again. And just move across and explore. And you find these, goblins and trolls and caves and all this stuff. And it's just a fun exploration battle game. There's a multiplayer component to it, which I haven't done because I don't play multiplayer games all that much. But what was really fun is I created my own server. I have a game server running. And so I have my own perpetual game state world where I have this thing, and I loaded it up 2 nights ago because I haven't played it since like August. And, I loaded it up right where I started, and I had all that stuff, and I looked at the map and I said, oh, that's right. I went over there, and you can make markers and say, oh, here's a cave, and I haven't completed that cave yet. Or, here's this cave and I completed it. It's like the Skyrim and Oblivion and type of stuff, where you go to a place and you clear it out, and you can go to another place and you clear it out, and you do all these things. There's no quests other than the bosses that you can stumble upon and fight. And I think I've only done one because I'm a big scaredy cat, and also I'm just not powerful enough, and I'm not playing with anyone. So I have very basic armor, very basic weapons. I'm just off exploring. But you find these boss areas, and to fight the boss, the first one anyways, you have to sacrifice 10 deer skins or whatever. So I collected a bunch of deer skins, sacrificed them, and then or offered them up to the bad guy or the boss, and the boss shows up and you defeat it, and then you get a lot of loot and all that fun stuff. It's a really, really good game. I wish it looked better. I hate the way Valheim looks. It's good lighting with low polygon and bad textures. It is a super weird and off-putting looking game, and I don't like the way it looks, but it's a fun gameplay. So I can get past it, but I really wish that they would just say, or maybe there's graphic mods, I don't know, but I don't like the way it looks. I think it's weird. So that is my number 8 game, Valheim. It is still in early access. It is an exception to my main rule, but again, just games are so different now than they were just even a few years ago. Very little games show up in early access that are not feature complete. It's a lot. It was anyways, where it was a lot of, this game's in early access. It's a demo that I built. Please give me money so that I can build a real game. Some games show up in early access and they're basically finished, like Valheim. It's just content, and that game blew up overnight so big. It was insane. I feel like literally every week for a couple months, they were releasing numbers. Like within the first 2 weeks, I think they sold 1 million copies. And then from there, it just went, okay, next week we sold 2 million. Next week we sold 3 million. Next week we sold 4 million. Next week we sold 8 million. It was astronomical how many copies of the game that sold, and everyone was playing it for a couple months. It was what you would hear on podcasts. Everyone was talking about Valheim. I had to get in on it. I created my own server, and I just loved it. It was so enjoyable. So Valheim, number 8. Let's move on to number 7. right, number 7, Little Nightmares 2. My friend Sean, I love you, man, because thank you for introducing this series to me. Again, just like Resident Evil, I hate scary games, but this game has such a unique, weird look to it, and it is so crazy. And it's dark and evil and twisted, but it's also just, it's that Tim Burton type of feel where it looks weird, it looks creepy, but it's not that bad. And so Little Nightmares, you're controlling this character. It's like a side-scrolling platformer type of game. And you're controlling this little tiny character, the size of maybe a mouse or maybe a little bit larger than a mouse. And like a phone, the size of your phone. It's this little humanoid creature. And you progress through this creepy, dark world that is so hard to look at, but at the same time you can't look away. It's just ugly and disgusting, but interesting in a way that I loved the first game. And the second game came out this year, and I really, really liked it. It adds more to the lore and story, which I wrote in my review. I don't understand. I don't understand how these games that have no character names, no cutscenes, no dialogue, have lore that everyone knows the name. Your character doesn't have a name. The bosses don't have a name. The levels don't have a name. The world that you're in doesn't have a name in the game. But outside of the game, everyone's like, oh, yeah, when you pick up 6 and you go to Jerry's, house in the woods, like, where are they coming up with this stuff? Because it's not in the game. But there's this extra lore outside, and I don't like that. I would rather it be in the game so I know the character's name and I know what level I'm in and who I'm fighting against and all this stuff. But it doesn't really matter because the gameplay itself is so interesting. The gameplay is basic. It's a very basic game. Like I said, it's a side-scrolling platformer going from left to right or right to left, and there's a little bit of depth into the levels as well, so it's not just 2D, it's a 3D side-scrolling platformer. You can think about it very much in the vein of Little Big Planet, where you have your characters and you can move back and forth through the dimension, but most of the time it is side-scrolling. It is basically from left to right, right to left, and a little bit of forwards and backwards. But the game style, the aesthetic of the game, the way the world looks is so dark and eerie and creepy and just, you don't want to be in it. It's disgusting in some points. You get like this big fat slob character where they're in this like abandoned, falling apart house, and the sink is overflowing with blood and oil and fish guts, and he's just slobbering everywhere and crawling across the floor, sniffing you out to find you and knocking over cans as you're hiding behind him because, again, you're a very small character, and these humanoid characters that you're trying to hide from are all very, very large, like building size. It is so interesting that I couldn't put it down. I couldn't stop. And there was some genuinely terrifying moments in that game. Like the hospital level will stick with me for the rest of my life. You're in this abandoned hospital that has lights flickering and it's mostly dark and black. You've got like these little lights flickering. And you're walking past these hallways of hospital rooms. And inside the hospital rooms, there's these broken down mannequins that don't have a head, or some of them do, I think, and they're just sitting there. They're mannequins, right? And you have a flashlight, and as you shine your flashlight on them, nothing's happening. But when you turn your back and you start progressing and you're in the dark, you start hearing stuff move around and creak. You look back, nothing's happened. You go forward a little bit more, and you keep hearing that scattering, this just the clanging of everything. And you know something in the dark is out there. You just don't know what it is or where it is. And so you shine back your light back a little bit more, and you keep checking. And you notice the mannequin started to move. It's in a different location, a different position. And you notice it's following you. But when you go up to it, nothing happens. And then you keep progressing through the hallway of flickering lights. And you get to underneath a light. And the mannequin is right behind you, reaching out with its like claw-like hand. And it's right there, but it's not moving. You can go up and jump on it and touch it. Nothing's happening. But as soon as you turn your back, it's like the Boo in Mario, where you face it, nothing happened. Turn your back, it's chasing you down. And it's absolutely terrifying. Imagine that scenario that I was just describing to you when and I'm talking real world location right now. It's raining outside. It's 1:30 in the morning. All the lights are off. You got a big, 16-foot projection screen, and you're playing this game in the dark by yourself at 1:30 in the morning while it's raining and lightning outside. It's intense. I'm sure you wouldn't get as much joy out of or the same type of experience out of the game if you played it, at 2:00 in the afternoon with the windows open, music playing and stuff. But that's not what you play games. That's not how people play games. You play it in the atmosphere that you're supposed to play it in. And as much as I hate those types of scary moments, it's so interesting. It kept me going throughout the game. And man, I loved Little Nightmares 2. Unfortunately, I don't think it's as good as Little Nightmares 1. Maybe because it was just new. Maybe because the locations and story were a little bit more interesting to me in 2. Maybe some of the setting and characters, like all the bad guys, I think were a little bit more interesting. But man, it is so, so good. So number 7, Little Nightmares 2. All right, number 6, Forza Horizon 5. I believe I talked about this on the last podcast, so I'm not going to go too much more in depth into this, but my feelings haven't changed. Forza Horizon 5 is Forza Horizon 4, Forza Horizon 3, as far as I played them, but just with a different location, a little bit better graphics, lighting systems and stuff like that. It's awesome. It's super fun. I dumped 50-something hours into that game in the span of a couple weeks. I loved that game, and I think it's great. I just think at this point, it's, again, formulaic. It's one of those things where you just can't keep doing the same thing. You cannot do the Far Cry method of new location, different bad guy, new location, same festival. It's not cutting it anymore after this. It needs to change up. And I believe I said this on the podcast. My personal idea, and I really don't do this very often. I don't like, daydreaming about games like I used to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we'd be on the playground talking about, well, man, can you imagine Super Mario Brothers 4 where it has, Mario's in a plane, and moving around, and you've got Toad, helping you out, dropping you mushrooms and stuff like that. I don't do, blind sky ambition type of hope and wishing type of game development hopes anymore. I just don't do that. But I think if I was going to design, or what I would like to see for the next Horizon game, which is probably going to come out in a couple years, because they switch back and forth. You have Forza Motorsport, which is a more serious Gran Turismo type of gameplay. And then you have the Horizon series, which is way more fun, way more arcadey, and it just likes to have a good time, and it's just more enjoyable. Your character is, best of the best. You're the greatest racer of all time, and everyone loves you. I think instead of just going to a new Horizon festival location and completing all this stuff, I think it would be more beneficial to design or scout the locations. I think that would be really cool if it was like a world tour. Forza Horizon 6 World Tour. You are the location manager, and you're saying, instead of one location this year, we're making it a bunch of different locations. We're going to have one part in the Rocky Mountains of the U.S. We're going to have another part in Italy, in the vineyards of Italy. We're going to have, a racetrack on the Autobahn. We're going to have South American, Aztec missions, races. Like, I think that would be way more interesting. And you're designing these courses. So you're in these worlds, and you're designing, all right, you got to go from here to here to here. And as you're driving, like, maybe things fall in the road, like a tree falls, and you have to plot a different course and stuff like that. I think would be so interesting, as opposed to just, here's another location, here's the festivals, seasons change everything. No, they don't. All that type of stuff, I think, would be much, much more interesting. And like I said, I just talked about Forza Horizon on the last podcast, so I don't want to belabor, too much of the moment. I just want to just get it out there. I think it's a really good game. It's on Game Pass too. Like, everything on Game Pass now, talking about video games in the last several years has changed dramatically, because a lot of people talk about games on podcasts as review pieces for their job. Like, should you buy this? Yes or no? And that's not really what people are talking about anymore. That's not how games work. Especially with Game Pass, it's like, why wouldn't you play this game? If you like racing games and you liked the Horizon series before, if you probably already played it, then of course you're going to play it. You're not going to buy it because it's basically free with a subscription anyways. It's like saying, well, am I going to want to watch, this new Netflix series? Well, you're not buying it on DVD. You just make the choice to watch it or not. Should you watch it? Do you like those actors? Do you like the story premise? If you do, then watch it. It's not costing you anything other than the subscription, which you already have and are paying for anyways. So it's just, do you want to devote your time to it, yes or no? And if that's the case, then yeah, freaking download it and play it. It's not costing you anything. So I don't get those conversations as much anymore. Should you play Forza Horizon 5? If you like racing games, absolutely, because it's the only racing game out this year. And also, I think it's just a really good racing game. It just needs to be changed up. So that's Forza Horizon 5, which is my number 6 game of the year.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
I'm one of the greatest, ain't no debating on it. I'm still levitated, I'm heavily medicated. Ironic, I gave him love and they end up hating on me. She told me she loved me and she been waiting. Been fighting hard for your love and I'm running thin on my patience. Needing someone to hug, even took it back to the basics. You see what you got me out here doing? Might have threw me off, but can't nobody stop the movement. Let's go. Left foot, right foot, levitating. Pop stars, do a leap with the baby. I had to lace my shoes for all the blessings I was chasing. If I ever slip, I fall into a better situation. So catch up, go put some cheese on it, get out and get your bread up. They always leave when you fall, but you run together. Weight of the world on my shoulders, I kept my head up. Now baby, stand up, cause girl, you
want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. So you can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. My love is like a rocket, watch it blast off. And I'm feeling so electric, down so awesome. And even if I wanted to, I can't stop. Yeah, 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 yeah. My love is like a rocket, watch it blast off. And I'm feeling so electric, dance my ass off. And even if I wanted to, I can't stop. Yeah, 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 yeah. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. You can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight. You can fly away with me tonight. Baby, let me take you for a ride. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
Man, I blew through that one. Okay, so number 5, Metroid Dread. Like I said, I played through the Metroid series earlier this year, and I think it was so good. And I'm A, bummed out that I haven't played those games before. B, really happy that I didn't play those games before because I got to play them all in a row, and it was just so much fun over the course of those couple of months to play through Metroid Zero Mission, AM2R, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, and then Metroid Dread. And I was skeptical about it, but man, and this is the thing that kicked it off for me with really focusing on it, was the Metroid series is something super special to a lot of people, and I finally understand and get it. So Metroid Dread is the continuation, but it's one of the gripes. And I don't like to get into gripes, as I'm not just like, let me tear down every game, but there are some glaring issues with certain games on my list this year. And one of the biggest ones is, and just in general with gaming at this point, is every major franchise is in a rut. And you can contribute it to new consoles and technology. You can contribute it to all the crap going on over the last couple of years, or you can just say developers don't do what they should do, which is take risks, change things up. Metroid Dread follows the exact same formula for the 5th game in the series. Metroid 1/0 mission, you pick up the same exact power-ups that you picked up in Metroid Dread, that you picked up in Metroid 1. In 1984, you picked up, or 86, I can't remember when Metroid 1 came out. 1986, you picked up the same exact power-ups that you pick up in 2021's Metroid Dread. The same storyline, not storyline, but the same gameplay beats, storyline beats happen. Samus loses her powers, and she has to regain them. Happens in every single Metroid game. I can say that because I played through all of them in the span of a couple months. It's the same game. Different location, tweaked story. Different story. The story's a little bit different. Same gameplay beats. And enough is enough, unfortunately. It's my number 5 game. Look how high it is over all these other games. And I'm kind of ragging on this because I'm just tired of, game developers doing the same stinking thing over and over again. It just change it up. There's not that big of a deal to change up. I don't need the screw attack to be the last and final power-up. How about just omitting it? How about changing the power-up so that I already have double jump or space jump or even screw attack and give me different new powers, because the end of Metroid Dread gives you a new power and you don't get to use it except for the last 30 seconds of the game, which I freaking hate. I hate when games give you the best, awesome, most power up and you get to use it for 30 seconds and it's basically a cutscene. Like, come on. So it's a really good game, and so that's my gripe with it. Let's talk about the awesome stuff about this game. It looks super, super good. It's very highly polished with its graphics. Everything shines and glows in certain ways. The level design is really interesting and unique. I am baffled that it is the only Metroid game I didn't get stuck in at all. I did not get, and this is the weird thing too. I think it's the easiest Metroid game. And again, maybe that's because I played all the other Metroid games in the series in a row, one right after the other, but I breezed through Metroid Dread. I did not die except for the Emmys and the boss fights. And again, here's a little bit of a gripe just because I noticed this stuff. I was so looking forward to exploring what I thought was going to be like a 20-hour game. And I felt like every 20 minutes or so, I got stopped with a boss fight of some sort. And one of the bosses, quote unquote bosses that you fight, are called Emmys. And these Emmys are these death robots that track you down in a certain section of the game. So you've got like this cave system, let's say. And in this cave section, the top right corner is this little sectioned off part where it's like a freeze-dried refrigerator room. And in this freeze-dried refrigerator area, it's several screens long, so it's not like just one screen. You're not in a boss location, but these death robots are trying to hunt you down, and they notice where you are, and they hunt you down, and they kill you. They grab you, and you have one opportunity to counterattack it or parry it. These counterattack parries windows where you can counter them are so small and so fast and so hard to actually time out. They're kind of random in a way that it's almost impossible to do. The checkpointing system is really, really good, so you're never losing progress. You just have to complete the area again, the little tiny refrigerator area again. But it happens so often and just completely sidetracks you from what you were doing originally that you might have to retry the Emmy. You might get grabbed. There was one instance where I wasn't having an issue with most of them. I die a couple times, maybe 2 or 3 times, and then beat the Emmy and, move on with my life. There was one time where it took me an hour to just not get grabbed in a certain area. I threw my hands up and I took a rage break because I was so angry. I was like, come on, I'm near the end of the game. I know I am from just the way the story's going. And I haven't had an issue really with anything in this game. And this one little thing where this happens with every freaking, this is why I hate bosses in games. I almost beat it the first time. I got to the area where the Mother Brain room is, where you get the power up to defeat the Emmy. I almost got to that room. I saw it and I had like 5 extra steps, but the stupid Emmy was like tracking me. I was cloaked, but my cloak power, ran out and it grabbed me. And then I tried to do it again, died instantly. Tried to do it again, died instantly. Tried to do it again, died instantly. I couldn't even get remotely close to where I was the first time. And so at some point I just threw my hands up and took a break, came back, died like a handful more times, and just got really pissed off. I was like, why am I having so much difficulty with this one section? But luckily I found out the area or traverse the area enough to get the power up to kill the Emmy and then move on. So I was in the middle of like, all right, I need to go here, and then I need to go over to this section, and then I can backtrack a little bit and grab these power-ups and then move on. And I got sidetracked for like 2 hours or an hour and a half or whatever because this stupid random difficulty spike. And the same thing with the bosses too. I didn't have too much difficulty with most of the bosses. There was like 3 bosses that I was just like, this sucks. Like, I'm not having fun with this boss at all. I know exactly what to do. I'm just not able to pull it off for one reason or another. And I knew that I wasn't having an issue. I knew the game was just being weird about it. Like, for whatever reason, the button, like, my button just died, or I ran out of missiles, like on the last boss. I got to the 3rd phase of the last boss on the 3rd try. I was almost done, but I ran out of missiles. And I was still, I was trying to go, well, crap, what do I do? And I was trying to survive and trying to shoot the guy because I knew I had 2 more hits before I would have finished the game. But unfortunately, I died, and then I spent an hour trying to get past the 1st phase again. That happens a lot with me and bosses, where I almost immediately beat it and have 0 problems with it. And then after I die, I retry it and I can't even get remotely close to where I was before for, 15 odd attempts. And it's just like, man, this sucks. So the bosses in this game are the big downfall of it. It's the only real downfall, is the same power-ups, which, you can't do anything about, and the bosses. And it's way too many. It just disrupted my experience of exploring and having fun with the game to do a boss fight. And then it was like, oh, come on. Okay, fine. I've moved on. Crap, what was I going to do? But it's a super good game. It's really good looking. It's extremely fast, too, which is one of my biggest issues with the Metroid series was, like, especially with Metroid, Super Metroid. Super Metroid is the one where I was like, dude, I feel like I'm running through molasses through half of this game. It is so slow compared to something like AM2R, where it's a much faster game engine. It's just so slow. But then I, played this and I was like, holy crap, this is like lightning fast. So it's super duper fast. And it's a great story. I really like the actual story of Samus going to this planet and finding out more about her upbringing and stuff like that. It's great. And there's this one moment, and I'm not giving anything away, I'm not spoiling anything, but there's this one cutscene that happens. There's a lot of cutscenes in this game. I'm actually really surprised. There's this one cutscene where Samus is talking to this one character, and the one character is like, "Are you up for it?" Samus doesn't say anything throughout the entire game. This is like, I think, one of the maybe couple, I think this is the only time she speaks in the entire game. She says like just a couple words, and it's like very powerful. It just seemed really interesting and powerful for her to speak at that moment. It was just like, dude, this is awesome. This is such a good game. I love it. As much as it doesn't sound like I love the game, like I said, those gripes are pretty big bullet points of my issues with the game. But the overall game, I'd say I adored this game. I loved this game. It's just, there were some points where I was like, man, this could have just been so much better if they did this or didn't add so many stinking boss fights. But that's it. Like, number 5 with a bullet, man, Metroid Dread. It's a great way to... I don't know if they are ending the 2D series of the game, because this is the first Metroid game in, I think it was like 17, 18 years, something like that. It's 2021. It's the end of 2021, and the last Metroid 2D game was Fusion in 2003 or 4, I think, something like that. So the next game in the series was, a decade and a half later, and it's really, really good. So that's number 5. All right. Guardians of the Galaxy, number 4. This game came out of nowhere, and I am so happy I played it, because again, just nothing was coming out that I would, if there were more games coming out this year, bigger, AAA title games, I would have not played this game at all. I would have written it off completely. Especially because of the way people were talking about it when it got announced. It got announced at E3. E3 was super weird again this year. They really, like, there's an easy way to fix E3, but E3 came out. This game got announced, and what they showed of it looked kind of bad. It did not look very good. I'm sick of Marvel at this point. It's just oversaturation of Marvel stuff at this point with everything: movies, TV shows, video games, comics. I'm just, dude, I love comics. I love superheroes. I'm at a point in my age where it's starting to get a little bit weird when I see people my age talk about, comics so much, and it's all surface level stuff. And I'm not sitting here going hipster or anything like that, but I'm just, it's really weird. When I was into this stuff as a kid, I was into this stuff as a teenager, I was into this stuff as a young adult, I was into this stuff as an adult, and people looked down on me when I was younger, in my 20s or 30s, and I was going, man, this Spider-Man comic's really good, or this Batman thing is really, really good. You should play it, or you should watch it, or you should see it, or whatever. And superheroes have hit so mainstream, so hard, and so much at this point, and I just don't care anymore. Like, I'll still read comics, I'll still play the games, I'll still watch the movies, but I don't need a new Marvel series or a new Marvel movie every couple of months. It's too much. Like, it's oversaturation. It's quantity over quality with a lot of that stuff. And I don't like the way that stuff has been going over the last several years. So I'm kind of burnt out of that type of stuff. I don't care. I don't think it's that great. A lot of people will go like, oh, anything Marvel is in my top 10 movies of all time. Endgame is my favorite movie of all time. I'm like, really? It's a good comic book. It's probably the best comic book movie, but really? Best movie of all time is a Marvel? I don't want to get on a tangent, but needless to say, when Guardians of the Galaxy video game got shown at E3 this year, everyone kind of crapped on it and said, oh, that looks terrible, that looks terrible. As it was coming out in October, nothing else was really coming out, or it was a couple weeks away from coming out. And I was like, you know what? I think out of all of the Marvel movies, Guardians is probably my favorite. So maybe this will be good. And I just kind of want to play something new. I'm kind of tired of playing old retro games. I want to play something new because I want to have something new to talk about on the podcast for my top 10 because nothing else has been coming out. So I did buy it, I think at full price. And I was blown away within the first, I'd say, 3 minutes of the game. I said to myself, this is going on my Game of the Year list. And not even just that, but it's a good game. You start off as Star-Lord or Peter Quill in your basement in the 80s, listening to your Star-Lord soundtrack, which I am definitely using that as podcast material, either at the intro, if you heard it, if I used it, or the end, or even as I'm talking about one of these games and during a break or something. It's so stinking good. They made a whole Star-Lord band for this game, and all the songs are rad. So definitely give the soundtrack a listen to if you are wanting some just good 80s metal type of music. But the story is so unbelievably good in this game. It's like, man, this is what comic book video game storytelling should strive to be, just like the Arkham series. It's so stinking good. And it is really, the script, I want to see, and I'm sure I've said this before, I want to see the script for this game. It has to be the biggest script in gaming history because every character is talking all the time. Your characters are having conversations throughout the entire game. And I think it took me like 18 plus hours, maybe somewhere around there, to finish playing through this game. Like, it is just chock full of games. It was it took me 20 hours to finish. So it's a 20-hour game. It's a single player game, and it's a very linear, it's a very Uncharted style of gameplay. So you've got little areas where you can kind of explore a little bit, but not too far off the beaten path. And you are unlocking like character, all the stuff that you find are just more money and upgrade, and then also character costumes, which are really cool. It's all a lot of like comic and movie costumes. It's just so good. I cannot say enough good things about this game. It's if the other 3 games didn't come out this year, I would probably put this might almost be more my number 3 than number 4 game, but dude, it's just such a good game. Out of all the games that I'm talking about, I would say probably play Guardians of the Galaxy over every one of these except for my number 1. It's too good to pass up. You have to play this game if you like superheroes at all, if you like comics at all, if you like storylines about like really interesting character development at all. Guardians of the Galaxy is absolutely worth playing through. So that is my number 4. And here's some Star-Lord.
Check this out. What you gonna do when the leaders turn it all upside down? Do you think you'll have anything left for another round? All the king's horses, all the king's men would never ever have the right to try and run the show again.
All right. The top 3. Number 3, Subnautica Below Zero. I'm going to keep this short and sweet to, kind of finish this up just a little bit here. Partially because it goes with my number 9, which is Resident Evil 4 VR. It's Subnautica Below Zero is a sequel to Subnautica, which came out in early access in 2014, in version 1.0 in 2017. It was my 2017 Game of the Year because of the VR mode. And again, that's why it's so high on this year's list too, is it's a sequel to the Subnautica game. And there's a mod for VR, which is so stinking good. It made the game so much better. I don't think I would have enjoyed this game nearly as much. It would have probably been in number 10 slot, maybe even not made the list if the VR mode wasn't there. Being submersed into an underground alien world and just, oh man, it's so good. I cannot believe how incredible VR makes this game. I really don't have that much more to say about it because it is just more Subnautica with a different level and different, little bit different abilities. There's a lot more land walking, which I did not care for. I think that was a very big mistake to make that game that big of land walking. Not because of it not being interesting. I think the weather system was probably the biggest issue. When you're out on the land, you're out in the cold, and so you have to regulate your temperature. So you're always having to keep an eye on your temperature gauge. So you cannot be out in the open air. You have to be in a cave or underground or underwater for a certain amount of time so that you don't die. And then also, the weather system is really cool because it kind of gets like super snowy or hail or rain or whatever, but there was this fog on the game that just made traversing and the walk speed. The walk speed was the main issue that I had with it. It just took too long to walk everywhere, so it really hindered my experience with the game being this really fun, immersive, world to play around in. It was just like, ugh, I gotta go to that base and I gotta walk all the way over there. Like, it sucks. And they have like this land speeder thing, but you have to find all the things for it, and then I did it. It did not feel fun to traverse around the open, outside land areas as much. And it's a good chunk of the game, which just kind of bummed me out. The underwater stuff is incredible. The exploring stuff is incredible. I started it back when it was announced in, I think, 2018 or early 2019. I can't remember. And then it was in early access, so there was very little to do, and there was no VR mode for it. And then the next year later, I was like, I want to see where it is at. And I got to the point and I was like, well, the game's still not finished. I'll wait. And then I was waiting, and they said, oh, we're releasing it in a couple months in early access. So I waited around for it. We just moved at that point too. And people were doing a VR mod for it. And I went, oh, thank you. Because they said, we're not doing VR for this sequel. Why? I don't know. It's the same game engine and all that. And like, the code's written, it works. Like, just implement it. Someone did. And it worked really, really well. There was a few hiccups and bugs here and there, but nothing too major. Subnautica Below Zero, my number 3. Number 2. This was going to be my number 1 until they announced my number 1 to be released this year. My number 2 is Hitman 3, which, if you know me at all, I love the Hitman series. I talked about it in Deathloop. Hitman, I did not understand the real love of the series until the 2016 game, and I still think the 2016 release, the way that they released content for that game is still the way to do it. I'm bummed that they didn't do it for 2, and I'm really baffled why they didn't do it for number 3. Just putting it out all at once is just not a great way to play the game. And the reason why is because those levels are so big and so unique and so chock full of different ways to complete all the objectives that if you don't spend the time replaying through those levels over and over and over again, and you just try to play the game Hitman as a level by level thing, the game's like, maybe 5 or 6 hours long. Like, it's a pretty short game, all things considered. But if you spend the time to really work out each level, each assassination, all the different opportunities and different, silly disguises and things that you can kill people in different ways with, you're going to miss out on the joy of the Hitman experience. So that's what we did a little bit. Unfortunately, it wasn't a year-long drawn-out thing like it was for 2016, but we spent a good chunk of time playing this year. We played through the first level, and I played through it like 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then I moved on to the next level. And then I played through that second level 3 or 4 times, and I completed the level by doing the hit while doing other opportunities, killing them in different ways each time. And it's just so awesome. I think the only issue was I was so wanting to see the progression of the story. The story's really interesting in this new Hitman trilogy. So watching Agent 47's relationship with, I can't remember your lady handler, but seeing that progression is so awesome. That the story in Hitman is so good that you need to play this series. If you like, this is a game that I did not think my wife would love, but she loved watching me play through this series. Like every month, we were dating at the time too in 2016. So she would come over and a new level would be released and we'd play through the level and we'd work out all the things. She's like, oh, go over there and try this. And she plays games differently than I do, which is what I love about our gaming sessions together, is because she tells me, oh, why don't you do it this way? And I play games differently and enjoy it differently because of the way she perceives the game to be played, as opposed to my way, which is more of a run and gun and kind of brute force and do this and complete the objective as efficiently as possible. She's really story intense driven, and she wants these games to last a lot longer. And it's really fun to spend the time to look at different objectives, look at the different ways, wait out certain opportunities, hear the dialogue of other NPC characters that I would never experience otherwise. So it was just really fun to play that game together over the course of months and months and months. And then, unfortunately, because of the way that the last Hitman 2 and 3 have gotten released, you have the opportunity. Why not just push the button and see the next cutscene? It's a missed opportunity. I hate that phrase a lot, but it really is. So Hitman 3 finalizes everything up in a really satisfying way. I think the levels were pretty good. I think they were better than Hitman 2. I think Hitman 2 has the least amount of favorite levels for me. Hitman 1, again, just because I spent so much time with Hitman 1's levels, because you had to if you wanted to enjoy the game. They didn't allow you to spend just a few hours with the entire game. You had to spend months with the game. That it really drove home the point of these levels are really solid. The levels in 3 are really good too. Dartmouth, I believe, which is like the Clue-esque type of level where it's the mansion and you have to find all the different clues and stuff. It's really, really good. The villa, the wine villa where you have the dance with your handler at the end is just, so good. And then the last level, which a lot of people hate, I think, I really enjoyed it. It's very different. It's a linear level, and it's very, very different. I really wish that would have been like maybe a, not a bonus level, but I wish they would have had one additional level past that. I think that would have been way more interesting. But man, I can't really say anything bad about Hitman 3. And the fact that now with Hitman 3, it's the newest engine, and you can import Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 into Hitman 3. So if you buy Hitman 3 with all the DLC of the first 2 games, you have 3 full Hitman games at any point you want. Like, it's all right there in one package. It is so unbelievably good that I don't know how they're going to do James Bond. IO Interactive is doing a James Bond series next, and I really hope it's good. I have faith. They've hit it out of the park with 3 major releases. They have exceeded my expectations on every single release that they put out with the last 3 games. So why not? Why wouldn't I perceive them to do good with a James Bond franchise, which needs to be done soon? So that's my number 2, Hitman 3. Number 1, Psychonauts 2. If you knew me, if you know me at all, you knew this was coming. Psychonauts, like I said, is my favorite game of all time. And it is my number 1 favorite game of all time. And the reason why is because of the world design. More than anything else, I think the world design, the level design, and the unique creativeness of that game is so interesting that no other game has even come close to it, in my opinion. People talk about things like Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem for the GameCube, where it's like doing these weird things with levels that the insanity effects where it just twists the game on its head. Think about that like a full game, but it's not like trying to trick you, it's just trying to show you interesting things. Unfortunately, and I'm just going to get the bad stuff out of the way, I think there are a couple issues that I had with this Psychonauts 2. One is the weird thing that's been happening with games. I'm a Christian, and I don't believe that homosexuality is good. And I'll just say that off the bat. If you hate me and don't want to listen to this podcast ever again, whatever. I don't care, This is my podcast. I can say what I want, and this is what I believe. It's part of my faith is homosexuality is wrong, and I'm mad that they put that in this game. There is a couple characters that are gay, and it really bogged down my playing experience. It was a bummer that I had to sit through something that I believe is wrong. It's part of my faith that it is wrong and a sin. And watching this and having to just experience and watch these people say that they love each other, I don't like that, and I don't want that to be a part of my gameplay experience, especially if it is a sequel to my favorite game of all time, which was not in there because that wasn't popular back then. It's popular now, and it's shoehorned into so much media that it just sickens me, and it's a bummer that it's shoehorned into Psychonauts 2. Other than that, really, I think it's a phenomenal game. It is, it still has the same humor as the original, which I loved. And I say Psychonauts 2 and the original, and there's 2 games. There's actually 3 Psychonauts games. A lot of people forget that Rhombus of Ruin, the VR exclusive game, is a sequel to Psychonauts 1, and this is a sequel to Rhombus of Ruin. You can think about Rhombus of Ruin as Psychonauts 1.5 if you want, like a 0.5 release, but literally Psychonauts 1 ends, Rhombus of Ruin starts at the end of Psychonauts 1, and then full on goes through a full story, and then Psychonauts 2 happens after what happens in Rhombus of Ruin. So if you don't have Rhombus of Ruin or haven't played through it, you're going to miss out on a good chunk of what's going on in between Psychonauts 1 and 2, even though they do a really good recap and a good job of explaining what happened in Rhombus of Ruin, because it is a short amount of time. It's a plane ride. Everything happens within a plane ride from the camp to Psychonauts headquarters, basically. But that, other than that, it is so unbelievably good that I cannot believe this game finally came out. My wife and I were backers of the Fig campaign, so we got this game technically. We spent the money for it back in 2016. At the end of 2016, and I believe it was announced at the Game Awards, and then the Fig campaign happened. We pre-ordered it and supplied funding for it. My wife got a little Raz figurine. We named our dog after the main character of Psychonauts, Raz, or Rasputin. And Psychonauts is just a part of our lives. It's it's the first game that my wife and I played through together, where I showed her that game and she loved it, and then we got married and named our dog the main character, and we both backed the sequel and all this stuff. So Psychonauts 2 was a long time coming. It got delayed so many times too. It was such a small, I think it was a $3 million campaign. They immediately met the goal and said, all right, we're making Psychonauts 2. It's going to be just a small little game so that we can, get a sequel out, because people have been waiting for it since 2005, since 2017. Then delay after delay. Oh, the game's just becoming a little bit bigger. The game's becoming a little bit bigger. Feature creep type of stuff. Until the point where Microsoft bought Double Fine, and we were all like, what is happening with Psychonauts? And they said, all right, everyone, Psychonauts 2 is still happening. And because Microsoft bought us, it's becoming a much bigger game. They took a couple years to fill out the rest of the game. When it finally got released this year, it was like a week before my birthday, and it was like, are you kidding? A sequel that I've been waiting for 16 years a sequel to my favorite game of all time is releasing on my birthday or right around my birthday, it was like a love letter to me in a way. And I loved it. I freaking love Psychonauts 2. I think it's the art style. Oh my gosh, the graphics of these characters. These characters don't have realistic faces or bodies. Everything's a little bit exaggerated. Everything's in a little bit place that it shouldn't be. And it really works for the overall, design of the characters in the world. The story is so much bigger than I thought it was going to be, too. I thought it was going to be like, okay, you go here and you do a couple of levels and it's a little bit bigger. And it was like, dude, this is a huge, massive game. The levels themselves, unfortunately, are not as memorable as some of the best levels. And I think I wrote this in the review or write-up for the Game of the Year, maybe even the write-up and review for the actual game itself. But in Psychonauts 1, I can pick a couple, just off the top of my head, favorite levels. You have the Milkman level, which is my favorite. You have a Napoleon level. You have Black Velvetopia. 3 right there, off the top of my head. I haven't played that game in years, and I can think of the levels off the top of my head because they are so memorable. I just played Psychonauts 2 a couple months ago and finished it 100%, by the way, before they released all the stuff to find the figments a lot easier. There was a couple hours of my gameplay that took me a lot longer than it should have to find the random little straggling Psychonaut or figments. But I 100% completed that game, and I loved every minute of it. But the levels are not as memorable or as good. I think the very beginning, when you're in Dr. Lobato's brain with all the teeth and mouth stuff, is just so gross and interesting. It's really, really good. I liked the library level, but it was a little bit hard to traverse and again find some of those random figments. The psychedelic senses with Jack Black as a voice. Jack Black's part of Double Fine at this point, as far as I'm concerned, so he's going to be in a lot of their games. I thought was really, really good. I just did not like how segmented it was. It was a little linear piece, and then you go to another linear piece, and then you go to another linear piece, and go through all that stuff. I thought it was really good, but the color palette was so yellow, lime green that it was a little bit more oversaturation than I would have liked a little bit more variety of the colors in that level. Still super good, but it is a long, big level too, and segmented in certain sections. Bob, I think it's Bob, his level, which is like the gardening level, which is probably the most trippy is not the right word, but it's the most Milkman-esque level, where the level twists and rotates in different ways that really reminded me of the Milkman level. And I was like, oh yeah, all right, cool. The library level is really interesting too. The theme park ride level, the dark ride level, is so good. But it's not on the same, I hate to say the word level, but it's not on the same level as the Psychonauts 1. And maybe that's just going to take time for it to gel with me a little bit, to reacclimate and just become a memory, like Black Velvetopia is, like the Milkman level is. Maybe it's just going to take time and maybe a couple more playthroughs. I'm not gonna sit here and play through the game as soon as I'm done recording this. I'm not gonna sit through and play through the game to in the next couple of months. I know my wife wants to play through it, so I'll watch her play through it, and I'll probably pick up the controller for a couple parts. But I am not going to pick it up and play through it all the way through for a good couple of years, because that's not who I am and that's not how I play games. And I want it to seep out of my mind little by little and come back to it and re-enjoy the way I did with the other levels. But I cannot believe Psychonauts 2 finally came out, and I cannot believe it came out because it just took so long. It felt like every year we were like, my wife and I made bets to each other of, is Psychonauts 2 gonna release this year? And we shook hands and we made bets every year. I think it's going to release this year. I think it's not going to release this year. And I can't remember what the prize was for being right or wrong. But it was just almost a running joke at a point. And so it finally got released. And I don't want to say I'm surprised by how good it is, because I can believe it. And I'm not really surprised because it's Double Fine. And I think they do a phenomenal job of playing through these games, or making these games, making them as good as they are, making them mechanics of how the game feels to play as good as it is. And the writing, I think the writing is spectacular. Tim Schafer is a freaking good writer, especially of comedy in video games. He knows how to write comedy well. And you'll hear people say, oh, comedy in video games is hard. Well, all comedy is hard. You just got to take the time to write it well and not rely on just memes and reference materials. And Psychonauts does not do that. It rests on the laurels of hard work and creative writing. And I think it is so stinking good. And Tim Schafer deserves a lot more credit for writing than he does. No one talks about his writing skills. He wrote Psychonauts 2, and it's just so good. And I'm not surprised. I am pleasantly happy with how Psychonauts 2 turned out, and it is my game of the year this year for the year 2020. So number 1, Psychonauts 2. Number 2, Hitman 3. Number 3, Subnautica Below Zero. In VR with the VR mod. Number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy. Number 5, Metroid Dread. Number 6, Forza Horizon 5. Number 7, Little Nightmares 2. Number 8, Valheim. Number 9, Resident Evil 4 VR. And number 10, Deathloop. Those games are my number 10 through 1 games of the year, with number 1 being Psychonauts 2. All right, so a little past, it's been a long podcast. It's been over 2 hours, so my voice is a little bit tired. It's New Year's Eve, and I am ready to celebrate by playing some video games and ring in the new year, shooting some guns in our backyard and hanging out with our chickens and ducks and having a good old time. I have been your host, Ryan Moore. This is the Game or Die podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. This is not anything that I do for money. I'm not trying to scam people out of giving me money to do my hobby. This is just fun for me. It's something that I enjoy doing. And if you like listening to me, thank you very much. You can always check out my website, gameordie.net, where I do a lot of write-ups and reviews, and I've done a couple videos. I have a YouTube channel for reviews. Again, not monetized or anything like that. It's just something I do for fun. And I'm going to try and do a lot more written reviews with a video, with me just reading the, basically reading the review and putting it out because I enjoy doing that stuff. It's a hobby for me. This is all fun for me, and it is not a job. I have a normal job. I'm pretty stinking good at it as far as I can tell. So thank you very much for listening. It's a long rambling way of saying things. And I hope 2022 is another great year for everyone listening and for myself, and hopefully I'll play more than 41 games to completion next year. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful new year, and I'll see you in 2022.